Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital. Now before I begin, be sure to click subscribe and turn on the notification bell. When you take Arizona Route 77 north from Tucson for about 25 miles, you will hit the small town of Oracle just as you round the purple peak of Mount Lemmon. Should you veer to the right before you reach Oracle, you will find yourself traveling down a well-paved road headed through the desert toward the mountains. At the end of this road is a small white adobe-style gate that opens to a hidden complex dotted with white geodesic domes and glass pyramids. This is Biosphere 2, the odd brainchild of billionaire Ed Bass, which once attempted to keep 8 people alive for 2 years straight before devolving into complete folly. But that's not the story I'm going to tell today, because for all of its strange history and futuristic pretensions, Biosphere 2 is also the home of one very small, very low-tech discovery, which could have important implications for farmers and landowners across the United States. We'll hear more about this discovery at the end of today's video. But before we get into agrivoltaics, today's video is going to cover the top things you should know about solar farms, in case you are planning to either lease out your land to a solar development company or build one yourself. Number 1, a solar farm is a mini power plant. Solar farms are decentralized, meaning you can place one theoretically on almost any parcel of land, including yours, and these farms typically consist of ground-mounted solar arrays installed across large areas. Number 2, when we're speaking of solar farms, we're usually talking about one of 2 different kinds. A utility scale kind, which is the version that we usually hear about in the news. These are very large solar farms that typically serve utility companies. The installations include hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of panels and cover hundreds of acres of land. However, there are also smaller solar farms that are built at the community scale. These facilities generate somewhere around 5 megawatts of electricity and are used to power a local community of homes and businesses. Communities often come together to produce these, and whoever participates in the program shares the power, but also some of the costs. Number 3, starting your own solar farm is a great use of land. If you have a large parcel of land, you can use it to create a community-scale solar farm to generate electricity for yourself and your neighbors. But even if you don't have the technical know-how or ambition to develop a solar farm yourself, leasing your land out to a solar or utility company is a great way to make extra passive income. Number 4, there are many benefits to solar farms. If you are developing a solar farm yourself, it can drastically decrease or completely eliminate your energy bill altogether. A nice thing about solar energy is that it is generally considered to be safe for both humans and wildlife. Of course, solar is also a renewable energy source. Another benefit to solar as compared to, say, wind energy is that solar is silent. And finally, solar can be compatible with agriculture. More on that later. Number 5. Having said all this, there are also some downsides to solar farms. Some people consider them to be a bit of an eyesore. Others do have some concerns about toxic chemicals, although it's important to note that solar manufacturers have to follow strict public health guidelines, both for the final end product and for the production process. Solar farming, like many forms of energy production, is water intensive, and perhaps of greatest concern, it takes up a lot of space, which could otherwise be used for recreational purposes or natural habitats. Number 6, if you are thinking about developing a solar farm, here are some basic stats. You need about 6 to 8 acres to generate 1 megawatt of energy. You'll also need about $1 million to install panels capable of producing 1 megawatt of energy. And then just for context, 1 megawatt of energy can power on average about 200 homes. And finally, number 7, developing a solar farm is a complicated process, and there are a number of steps. Before you do anything else, you want to conduct thorough market research to ensure that there is demand for the energy that you will be producing. Developing a solar farm is like any other development project. It needs to pan out and generate a profit. So once you've determined that there is a market for your energy, you also want to make sure that it's cost effective and that developing this energy will produce a profit that makes it worthwhile. At this stage, one of your biggest hurdles will be finding financing. Developing solar energy is not cheap. As we saw before, you need at least $1 million to produce just 1 megawatt of energy. You are going to need to put together probably a couple different sources of financing, from investors to loans. On top of figuring out your financing, you'll also need to become an expert in solar energy. Not only will you need to know how to develop the farm itself, but you will also need to run and maintain it in the long term. Assuming you're able to find financing, you will then need to create a business entity, and this involves the typical business creation steps: drafting an operating agreement and your company bylaws, getting a certificate of incorporation, etc. Then you will need to find appropriate land. While solar can theoretically be placed on almost any parcel of land, there are some land characteristics that are preferable. For example, ideally you'll want a flat, south-facing parcel of land in an area that gets a lot of sunshine, and the property should ideally be near power lines and access roads. Once you have found your land, you'll produce your engineering drawings and obtain all licenses and permits, as well as insurance, and then procure your equipment, at which stage you can hire a contractor to install the panels. Finally, you'll connect to the grid. Now, this last step can either be very simple or fairly complicated, depending on the capacity of the local utility company. You may at this stage need to run a fair amount of underground wire and even create a new substation. But your local utility company will do an analysis of the necessary infrastructure required to take on the additional energy from your panels. But let's return to Biosphere 2 and the small shady farm that biogeographer Greg Barron-Gafford maintains a short walk away from the glass pyramids. Barron-Gafford is trying to answer one question: where are we going to put all those solar panels we need to eventually generate the majority of our energy from renewables? Solar panels, after all, need a lot of space, and most of that space is likely to come from rural farmland, where conflicts over land use are sure to become inevitable. Unless, that is, solar panels can learn to coexist with crops, which is precisely what Barron-Gafford hopes to prove. Though Barron-Gafford's initial goal was more modest, he started his biosphere garden to find a way to combat the extra heat created by solar panels. Maybe, he thought, growing plants under the panels would help to absorb some of the heat they generated, preventing them from raising temperatures in the surrounding area. Barron-Gafford quickly found that plants do indeed cool the area around the panels. And not only that, the solar panels also produced 3% more energy during the growing season. But more importantly, Barron-Gafford found that his plants grow differently under the panels. The shade the solar panels provides keeps moisture in the ground longer, which helps certain species of plants grow larger and more productive with less water. Barron-Gafford's tomato production doubled while using significantly less water. So too with jalapenos and chiltepin peppers. Perhaps solar and agriculture don't need to be enemies after all. Of course, transitioning Barron-Gafford's system from a small research plot to a full-scale working farm is going to run into all kinds of logistical questions. But if solar is able to work harmoniously with both crops and animals, it can represent a substantial new income stream for farmers while also helping us to transition to renewable energy. Food, fiber, and energy all from the same field. But do you have any stories about developing a solar farm? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down listings at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.